does not feel right. I'm freaking out right now. Think of somebody or something that you love that you don't need to take to the orthodontist. Hi, I'm Ramona and welcome back to Ascend Legal 101. We've had a special request from one of our viewers and clients about having more videos about how to deal with stress or urgent human factors. I'm going to revisit the video about my experience in meditating every single day for a whole year. I had originally posted it and was exceedingly uncomfortable about keeping it. It was just too personal for me. So what I've done is re-edited this video, and I hope in sharing my experience that it's going to help you. Thank you. I'd like to share my experience of meditating for a whole year, every single day. And the reason why I would like to share this with you is because it comes under that heading of how are you dealing with your shit. We'll just see how it goes. Anybody who has ever been to any of my workshops or have done any coaching with me knows that we always take some time to focus on what are you going to do about it and how are you going to deal with whatever is usually the underlying problem, not the fact that you've lost your job or something else. So first of all, before we get started, I'm not teaching meditation. I'm not promoting a product or a method of meditation. I'm just talking about my experience, what happened, how it's worked for me. So I just want to get that clear right off the bat. This is not a paid promotion. There's nothing like that happening in this video. Maybe the place to start for us is that if you knew me in real life, you would not peg me for a meditator. I think people, especially people who I've crossed swords with, would think that really I just spend all my free time sharpening things, like my sword or my tongue. Because in both law and my other pursuits, I can have a strong and intense personality. I mean, generally my personality is intense. Let's just call it that. And I meditated sort of off and on over the years, probably ever since my first child was born, because I couldn't sleep, of course. So I went to a hypnotherapist so that I could sleep, and I love hypnotherapy. And she sort of introduced me to meditating. She would make these hypnosis things for me to do at night before I went to sleep, and it was just like a guided meditation. So over the years, off and on, I've been a meditator, but it's always been on my bucket list to do a meditation retreat or something like that. Take an extended period of time away from your life to just fully engage in the practice of meditation so that I could learn. I don't want to get too bogged down in the past or the stuff, but a couple of years ago, I wasn't in the best place in the world. I had a business and I had a position of responsibility on a board that turned out to be quite a position of responsibility. And I was basically working 2 full-time jobs. In one of them I got paid for and the other one I didn't. Okay, by the end of my time in leadership in this second endeavor, I was completely depleted. I was angry all the time. I was very resentful. I didn't respect anybody around me. I want to say I was not disrespectful to people around me, but that is probably not true. And I was exhausted. I couldn't sleep. My hair had turned gray, like really gray, which you can see I've cured. I cure every about 4 to 6 weeks. And I'd gained a ton of weight. I would say pretty much all of my relationships were in the tank. And I was done. No gas in my tank, nothing. So I decided when I was finished there, I spent some time away. And then I got back into my regular life, and my regular life wasn't really working for me either, because I wasn't working on me. I wasn't fixing anything. I was still pissed off all the time, super resentful, couldn't wait to take somebody out, really still in that mode where I was like creating a case, right? Collecting evidence, creating a case. Loved it when people underestimated me, because when I took them out, they never saw it coming. I loved that. And I was very, very much still in that mindset. And then 2 things happened. One is I thought I got to start to deal with this, because I am a wreck. And I'm not helping my family or anybody by being such a bitch all the time, or being really checked out. I think probably is worse. So I thought, well, I'm gonna go back and see my therapist. And I did some hypnotherapy, and I had a really profound hypnotherapy session. And the next day I thought, oh, I have to do something that will sort of help me through this. And so I started meditating again. And that was February 20-something-ish last year. I had purchased a book over a year before by Dr. Joe Dispenza called Were the Placebo. And I hadn't read it. I put it beside my bedside table, actually on the floor beside my bed, and it sat there pretty much for a year. It only got moved when I vacuumed. And I thought, well, maybe I should read that book. And what I loved about Dr. Joe's work, I'd heard him speak before on a podcast or something, was that he was all about neuroscience. He was sciencey. He wasn't frou-frou la-la, because I was not in the space where I could deal with frou-frou la-la at all. And to be quite honest with you, I read the book and listened to the audiobook at the same time so that I could follow along properly, because it was scientifically based and I needed to sort of anchor myself in it without checking out while I was reading more technical explanations for what happens in our brains when we meditate. And at the same time, I started doing the meditations that came with the book. Then I downloaded a couple of his meditations, particularly the ones that were short. So the meditations that came with the book were about 40 or 45 minutes long, and I did them once a day. But what I started to do was I downloaded his morning and evening meditations, which are short, 20 minutes, 23-ish minutes each. And so if I didn't have time in the morning, or I slept in, or whatever was going on, I would just do this 20-minute morning meditation and off I would go. And then COVID came. And I thought, well, here I am with my kids at home, and they were homeschooling, and their schools were great about getting them on track really quickly with online learning. And so I thought, here's my chance, here's my opportunity. I'm going to do my meditation retreat. So I would get them all set up with their homeschooling. And what I did at the same time was I took Dr. Dispenza's progressive workshop and intensive workshop online at the same time. And with that came other meditations as you worked your way through the workshops. So they would go to school, and then so would I. And that was really important, I think, for all of us, because it kept everybody calm and more centered at a time where nobody in the world knew what the heck was going on. So ever since February 21st or 22nd, of 2020, whatever that date was, I've meditated every day for over a year. Usually it's twice a day, the morning and the evening. And during that first lockdown period, it was sometimes up to 3 hours a day. And I really fought with myself. And that is what meditation is. In fact, when I say sometimes, really I mean most of the time. So lots of times I get into the zone and it's awesome and mystical and beautiful and loving and gorgeous. And a lot of times it's like training an animal. And Dr. Dispenza does talk about that. He talks about training a stallion. And that's kind of what it's like. It reminded me of when I used to take my German Shepherd to training, and you're like, no, sit, stay. You know, we're not doing that today. That's what I felt like I was having to do with me sometimes, because I would constantly default to this mentality that was really negative, but not just negative. It was very combative. I'm thinking about how I'm going to win, and whoever else is on the other side, it will be ruined. And I have to say that is not a healthy way to live, especially for an extended period of time. What happened to me, this is only my experience, was that I realized I had little pockets of feelings all over my body that I just stored there, because I always had the armor on. But a lot of times one of these pockets of experience or feelings or whatever, it binds me. And then it comes out my eyes. And sometimes it just feels like it's going to break me. But what I have discovered is that if I let it come out my eyes or have the yucky, ugly cry, it will leave my body. Dr. Dispenza in his workshop tells a story about a friend of his who was doing the work and meditating and, just doing the work, doing his homework. And things started to naturally fall away from his life, things that were really important to him. You gotta let this stuff sort itself out. And in another book that I read, actually called The Buddha and the Badass, the author refers to it as the beautiful destruction. And that is some of the things in your life. I mean, your life falls apart sometimes, right? And we all have experienced that. I think along with so many other people during this pandemic was that things were naturally falling away from my life, like parts of my business or the relationships that were really, really important to me, friends. It was tough. I mean, there were periods of time I didn't think I was going to make it. I just had to take a little break. So, during the time that I went through this beautiful destruction period, which I'm sure is probably ongoing, I had a really hard time while I was meditating, connecting to my heart. And when I was new, actually, really new, I had a really hard time finding any higher sort of elevated thoughts or feelings. Really hard time. And so what I found worked for me was I thought of somebody that I loved. And it wasn't somebody that I had a trigger or attachment to. So I wouldn't think about partners or ex-partners or my children. I could connect with thinking about my children when they were babies. But now that they're teenagers, when I started to think about them, I was always like, my head would start in the, oh, you brush your teeth, got to get braces, and we got to do this, and don't forget to do your homework, and what about that? So those kinds of people who I love dearly, but there's some kind of trigger, something, there's stuff going on, there's stuff you got to deal with. I didn't think about those people. I thought about my dog, who I loved. I thought about my great-grandparents, who I've never met. I thought about my grandpa who died a couple years ago. I feel like I'm connecting with them now because I can feel sort of the heat in my heart. So my tip for people who are like me, when you're trying to find the place to connect with your heart and you don't feel like you can, think of somebody or something that you love that you don't need to take to the orthodontist. And what happens then is that it makes it, when you are connecting with your heart to people like the kids you got to take to the orthodontist, then all the braces and brushing your teeth aren't going to drive you crazy anymore. So that was a big one because I personally couldn't find an elevated feeling to save my life. There was no feeling good for me. So, I had to find ways, I had to find workarounds, right? As we do. And one time I had connected my energy centers during this meditation, and I had the most unbelievably profound experience that I just didn't think was possible. I didn't know about it. I'm sure I probably read about it in the book, but I probably forgot that part. I had light come through my whole body like a lightsaber. It was sort of, when they turn on the lightsabers and it goes shoo. That's what it was like. With the sound and everything. Only the beam of light going through my body was bigger than a lightsaber but smaller than a spotlight. But it seemed like this sort of white spotlight going from my first energy center all the way out the top of my head. And there was a real sort of high, I don't want to say high frequency, but that's probably what it is. Like there was a real quickness to it. It was like electricity. And there was a sound to it, just like, the lightsaber, but more a deeper hum. And it was just so intense. And of course, as soon as it happened, I was in the zone enough that it was with me for a few seconds or a very short period of time. And then it was gone because I was like, whoa, what is that? That's crazy. And I was so excited about it. And I had so much electricity in my body. Like I was just so ramped up that it was just amazing. And I've talked to friends about it and they have names for it and I forget what that is, but I'd never experienced anything like that before. It is such an exercise in letting go, because if I pay attention to it, it will leave me. But if I let it go and just let it be, it will stay. It's doing the work without doing the work, which sounds crazy, but it's truly, truly profound. I get these waves of energy through my body, just like watching a wave, ripple across the ocean, only it starts at my toes and works its way up all through my body. And then another one comes. It's like when when you have a sheet and you're making your bed and the sheet goes like that. That's what it feels like. That's what it I guess if it had a look, that's what it would look like, but it feels like that. But of course, because I'm I'm just a beginner still, I'm interested to know how this practice will evolve over time. And I can tell you a couple of things that are significant that have happened. The first is that I am a troll for sugar. I have a terrible sweet tooth. It's very easy for me to gain weight. I do not crave sugar anymore. I have lost some weight. I don't even think about sugar. I still love chocolate, and so I'll have 90% Lindt. And that is amazing, because my life has been with the beautiful destruction. If this was like 2 or 3 years ago, I would have dived into a vat of Rocky Road ice cream and never come out. And now I think if somebody said, let's eat cake, I'd probably eat cake, but not very much. Maybe I just have one little piece instead of wanting to eat the whole cake. You know what I'm talking about. Don't pretend you don't. I think, though, that the most significant change is in just generally my attitude. I don't spend my entire time in the shower creating a war plan anymore. And when I catch myself heading into that direction, now I can say, hey, you know what, girl? Today we're not doing that. And for a period of time, I would say, change. Like really, it was like all will, like I had to make myself. And then I realized that I wasn't being kind to myself. So I had to find a new way to approach that. So now I kind of pretend like if you have kids, you know what I'm talking about, the mama cat from Aristocats. And, she says, no, darling. And that's the way I talk to myself now. Like I'm actually somebody that I love. And even just being a smidge nicer to myself has helped me be nicer to other people. Not just fake nice, but really in my head, I hate their guts. I mean, really and truly finding the humanity in other people. There are a lot of people who I just never, ever, ever let off the hook. And now I just do, because they just are who they are. And I've always been somebody who really feels strongly about taking responsibility and being accountable, but there are lots of things that I wasn't taking responsibility for in my own life or being accountable. And I'm now taking responsibility for those things. I'm being accountable. I'm saying the things that need to be said and apologizing if I need to. If you knew me before, there was probably about a 2-year period where I thought I was having a heart attack all the time. My stress load was so high between work and work. So, and I felt like I was having a heart attack. I mean, there was a time I was on the phone with somebody and he was going on and on and on, and I thought, and I felt it, like I physically felt it. I thought, oh Jesus, I'm having a jammer right now. And so I went and changed my clothes while he was still talking, because I thought I'm going to have to call the ambulance as soon as I get off the phone. So I don't feel like that anymore. It's like there's some room in my chest again and I can breathe. And that is beautiful. I mean, I just can't even tell you how good that feels compared to how I used to feel, because I thought I was on death's door like all the time. Here's another tool we can use to deal with all that shit that comes up, especially if we're in law or if we're a regulator, or if we have those really stressful jobs. In aviation, any of those human factors, if you're losing your marbles, here's another tool that we can use. And what I'm going to do is in the description, I'll leave a link to Dr. Dispenza's website if you want to check out his stuff. I'm a sciencey kind of person. I really love that stuff. So his teaching worked for me. I really like it a lot. But, I'm sure there are other teachers that are right for you and meant for you if you are so inclined. I also really like Kyle Cease because he is so funny. He's a comedian. I'll also leave his link in the website. He meditates as well and has meditation programs. He's hilarious. So I love his work as well. And thank you very much for taking the time to listen. Please leave a comment if you're sort of embarking on this journey, and I'd like to know about it. We need to be dealing with this stuff because it does affect our jobs, it does affect our families, and affects ourselves. And I don't think you should wait to age into caring about yourself like a lot of people do. At any age, please go ahead and start looking after yourself now. So even if you think I am a parent and I have a you know, job, business, gotta go work out, all those things that you need to do, and you for sure don't have time to meditate, I'm here to tell you, I'm a single parent with a business, and I used to be the president of everything, and I made time. You can make time, even if it's 20 minutes. And there are lots of meditations that are not long. It doesn't have to be a real arduous practice, okay? It's just taking 20 minutes for you so you can breathe, preferably through your nose and into your heart. That's it. It's actually not hard. It probably is rocket science, but I just haven't got to that part yet. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.